Calling to order meeting of the Wyndham Northeast Unified Elementary School District. I'm looking for adjustments to the agenda number 2. Do we have any? Hearing none, I will go on to 3, communications and public comments. And I'd like us to make, as part of this, the habit of just doing a roll call and having everybody introduce themselves, if you don't all mind. Cheryl, I'm going to start with you. Oh, you are muted.
Cheryl Charles, representing Westminster on this Union School Board.
All right. Helen, you're next on my screen.
Hi, good everyone. Helen Richards Peel. I am the principal at Grafton Elementary.
Lynn, you're next.
Hi, Lynn Morgan, and I'm representing Athens on the school board.
Ms. Carey, you're up next. Yes, you are. Lynn, you want to both unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lynn Carey, and I'm the assistant superintendent. Chris just lost his power, his internet. He'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, he's been having trouble, and I've been having some sort of bizarre problem myself. Liz, you're next.
Hello, Liz Hardy, principal of Westminster Center School.
All right. Chris, you're back. We introduce yourself. Oh, we still got you. And Chris, you'll have to unmute yourself as part of that. Chris, you need to unmute yourself, my friend.
Chris Pratt, superintendent.
All right. Melissa, we're doing introductions. You want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
I'm Melissa Karlstrom. I am on the school board and I live in Westminster.
All right. Jessa, you're up next.
Jessa, West Clark, Grafton.
And Flora, why don't you introduce yourself?
Flora Pagan, business manager.
All right. Nicole, I assume you're here as recording person tonight?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, am I missing anybody? They say I'm having just the most marvelous set of problems here this evening with this system. I'm not quite sure why. Is that everybody? Let's see, if I haven't asked you to introduce yourself, unmute yourself and introduce yourself. Everybody. All right. Again, is there any communications and public comments? I don't see members of the public tonight, so I'm assuming we can move on to the review and approval of board minutes for October 22nd. Do everyone have them? That would be easier if you do.
I move approval of the board minutes from October 22nd.
All right, Lynn, did you want to second that, or did you see something?
I can second that.
All right. Without objection, all in favor? Lynn? Cheryl, I see, says aye. Melissa waved her hand aye. And I believe that makes it a majority. So they are approved. We're going to go on to reports and principal report. Who wants to start first? Helen, you want to lead us off?
Helen and I were, oh, go ahead.
Liz and I are doing this together, and she's going to kick it off.
All
Yeah,
right.
I'll start off with the reopening. So both schools are now open K-6 4 days a week. We're able to adhere to the Vermont guidelines around safe and healthy schools, and it's really great to have everyone back in the building. Grafton has 49 students enrolled, 8 of which are VTVLC students. They have 2 students returning from VTVLC in January, and will welcome 2 new students this week, 1 in first and 1 in third. They have had to work with families who needed to quarantine to set up learning remotely for their 2 students. And because they had done the work of setting up Google Classroom and learning menus, the students were able to continue their learning and not miss school for 14 days. Westminster currently has 154 students, 19 of which are VTVLC students. And as with Grafton, Westminster has also had to work with families to adhere to the quarantining guidelines and offer remote learning opportunities while students are quarantining. As you know, Westminster did have to work with the Vermont Department of Health and decided to move to a week of remote learning last week. Our staff was able to transition from hybrid to fully remote for 1 week, and we're really happy with the systems that we had created this year that really have allowed us to move from one instructional model to another.
So how are we? We're
Was
all.
everybody able to hear all that? I know I was coming in kind of jarbled for me.
Yeah. It was.
There does seem to be a bandwidth issue, and the way this software works is if one of you is having bandwidth issues, it affects the reception of everybody. It's just a thing I've learned recently. So, you know, Helen, you were coming in kind of blocky, and poor Chris has been coming in and out. Chris, what I would suggest, and frankly, Helen, you may need to do this too, is if you need to and feel comfortable switching to straight audio, that bandwidth issue will clean up immediately. It's
okay.
Not that we don't want to see you, but we want to be.
I'll try the next part, but tell me if I'm.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that?
So I'm going to do the next part. So tell me if you get this or not. Both schools celebrated Halloween a little differently this year than in previous, but nevertheless, we had great celebrations with parades outside, and Grafton paraded around the little village, and Westminster did their parade in the parking lot, and costumes were awesome.
Good to hear.
Great. So the next part was on Veterans Day. Typically, Grafton does a big celebration of our veterans. We invite them in and serve them breakfast and celebrate them and honor them. But of course, that could not occur this year. So what we did instead was we created cards that were signed by all the faculty at Grafton and sent them all out to all our veterans. And from what I'm hearing back, we got many thank yous back on our thank you to them for their service.
Another thing that's going to be a little bit different this year is Thanksgiving. So Westminster will not be able to welcome the community into our school. So we're working outwardly to show gratitude to our community, and grade levels are working together with our essentialists to take on a part of the community like fire and rescue or Westminster Cares, Sheriff Department, town crew, etc., and create letters of gratitude. So these will be delivered next Friday, November 20th. Our guidance counselor, Joe Smith, is also coordinating Westminster staff to create food baskets for local families. We have 12 turkeys that were donated, and the staff are pitching in to create baskets, which Joe will deliver on the 20th as well.
Have we contacted Westminster Cares and Grafton Cares? Because I know they have been sort of co-hosts of these Thanksgiving events in the past, or do they know that for sure that we're not going to be able to be there, or we're not going to be open for business, as it were?
I haven't contacted them, but
Yeah.
I will. I can absolutely, and let them know we're not having our typical.
Yeah, that's important.
I'll do the same for Grafton also.
All right.
Great.
The next part is on our professional development. The elementary principals continue to work very closely together to provide professional development for staff every Wednesday. Much of this work supports the implementation of our new reading system, Fontes and Pinnell Classroom. Last week, teachers worked in SU grade level teams to analyze the MAPS scores and the Fontes and Pinnell benchmarking data. Grade level teams also had an opportunity to problem solve and share ideas on strategies that have been effective in this hybrid in-person remote model. Next week on November 18th, thanks to the great work by Lynn Carey, all elementary teachers will have the opportunity to attend a day-long training, and this will be going deeper with distance learning. This is an extension of the book study that we all did in late August with the Distance Learning Playbook by Fisher, Frey, and Hattie. This will give our staff more exposure to best practices with remote learning in preparation that we may need to go remote at some point this school year.
The after-school programs in both locations are up and running, and the Grafton program continues to go well. They're averaging 12 to 15 students that are participating. The students put together Halloween decorations, which were displayed outside on the library lawn, participated in a bike club run by Miss Johnson, and other fun educational opportunities. In Westminster, the program is also growing with our enrollment around 18 to 20 students 4 days a week. We offer tutoring daily as well as an outdoor activity along with arts and crafts. We've been taking advantage of the weather and using our bikes as the outdoor activity much of the time. As the program continues to grow, we're planning on adding a variety of clubs as we've had in the years past.
I'm going to ask you a question about that. I saw Helen on a bike the other day, which I found more delightful than perhaps was appropriate, but I did. And do we have lights for those bikes?
Do we have what?
We have lights for those bikes?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Light.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think the school bikes do.
All right. Well, that's just something to take a look at as it gets a little darker this year. Assuming that we're all still doing this, into the rest of November, but it was an item. Could you get into a little bit more?
The last thing we have on our report.
Go ahead.
The last thing we have on our report is about trimester 1, which is ended this Friday, and the report cards will be going out next Friday with our students. And I just think all of our teachers deserve to be commended for successfully completing their first trimester this year. They've had to work extra hard to make this happen. And the following week, on November 23rd, they will be holding remotely, conferences with their families to talk about the learning that has occurred so far this semester. One of our goals as a district is to continue to work on having students involved more with their conferences and begin to report out on their own learning, because research shows that the more students can own their own learning, the more learning that will happen. So one of the things we're asking is for our students to also be a part of those conferences. So I think that's the end of our report. If anybody has any questions for either Liz or myself.
I always do, so I'm going to ask somebody else to start. Lynn?
Are both schools doing the Thanksgiving food baskets? Or is it just Westminster?
I'm not aware of any going on in Grafton, but that's a question I'll ask Mary Beth tomorrow.
Okay.
Well, Cheryl,
Have they-
go ahead. Sorry.
No,
Helen, you're breaking up again, I am sorry to say.
I was just asking if it was. Let's try that again. I'll turn off my video. Maybe that helps. I'm not sure if Grafton has done that in the past, but I don't know. Liz, has Grafton done food baskets in the past?
No, but our feast is so huge and well attended. We often send to-go containers with people, or people come for a to-go container that they take to somebody who's unable to attend.
It's one of our bigger outreach efforts of the year, and it's remarkable. It's built a lot of the. I swear that at least some proportion of the concern about losing the school has to do with making certain it's there for the Thanksgiving.
We do usually do takeout meals for Grafton Cares, Jack.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, just letting them know that we won't be doing it this year.
Yeah, I just feel, it may not have occurred to people that this is going to be different. So we need to take care of this earlier rather than later. And it's already a little on the later side. Cheryl, you got your hand up, so fire away.
Right. Just a couple of questions. Liz, we're down quite a few students from last year and the year before. And I wondered if, I know that Lynn Carey has been giving us numbers of children who are involved in homeschooling, and that is an increase apparently from the most recent years. I wondered if you had any additional insight into that. And then I have a general question about, we're now quite a few weeks into schooling in still a most unusual time with the pandemic environment. And yet, I'm hearing reports that things are going smoothly. I just wondered if you could, one, comment on the number of kids, and secondly, what's the overall mood or spirit in the schools? I'd like each of you to respond, both Helen and Liz, to respond to that, if you would.
Yeah, I think the mood in Westminster is just we're happy to have them in the building and really trying to capitalize on the time of in-person instruction, because we know the remote learning is so different and not as rich as the in-person instruction. And we're just trying to capitalize on the time that they're in the building. And I think our dismissal or our remote learning last week really put in perspective that could happen again. We don't know how long we're going to be in person. Let's capitalize on the time that we're in the building. As far as the enrollment, it really has been a moving target as far as kids moving in and out. And I'm not really sure about the question about what you wanted me to comment on regarding the homeschooling. We do have a number of homeschoolers in Westminster. And right now there's 154 students that are enrolled at Westminster Center.
Right. That's helpful. I know we don't have an explanation for all of that, but I appreciate your comments. Yeah. Helen, did you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, spirits are pretty positive and pretty up. But I also think that, they're all human beings and they are all on a roller coaster this year with the constant, ups and downs and changes. And we've certainly had our share of meltdowns. And I just think it's important that we, as administrators, just continue to support them and encourage them and just sort of try to convey confidence that, we can do this. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's different, but we can do this. I think this PD will be just in time PD for, continued support of what can possibly happen when you do remote. That a lot we can learn and a lot that kids can learn if we can learn how to do this really, really well. So, I would say that the current climate in the greater world, not only just in Vermont, but in states in our great. So I think, everybody's starting to get a little worried and wondering about how to keep doing this. I'm told that there are no active known cases in Grafton and Athens, so that's good. I feel pretty good about that and safe coming to work every day. But I know that the pressures and hearing that constantly on the news, Vermont over 100 today. So that's, it's a bit scary and it has an effect on everybody's well-being.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments.
Listen, I'm going to ask you if you've got anything you want to ask. This is, round robin. Jessa, I see your hand up. Oh, I didn't even see the little blue hand. So far away. You'll have to take your mic off, put your mic on.
Sorry, I was trying to lower my hand. I do have a couple questions because we did get the numbers from Lynn about the homeschoolers, which is great. But I noticed, especially in Grafton, but pretty much in all the districts, the number of kids that are registering for homeschool has more than doubled from last year everywhere. And I'm wondering if, one, that's a trend, if we can get numbers from years prior. I hate to do that to Lynn. But also, I'm wondering if anybody in Grafton especially has thought about the reasons why. Grafton, the GES population is about half Grafton, half Athens. So we have about 25 kids in public school in Grafton. And right now we have 12 homeschoolers in Grafton. Plus we have kids going to private school in Grafton. And I'm wondering if the district or the SU in general has tried to look at those numbers and see sort of what we're lacking, why people are choosing something other than our public schools. And also if this year is an anomaly or if those numbers are going up every year. The other sort of comment I have to the principals is the, Liz especially was alluding to how much better in-person instruction is. And I do know that's true, especially this year, because distance learning is not something we're familiar with here. But it has been done in other places and for other more targeted populations of students. And I'm wondering if we've looked into sort of the numbers and the way that works. If there is a group of students that are well targeted for distance learning and it's something that we could pursue in different groups as more of a recommendation, if things change with in-person instruction down the road. And then I guess that's really it. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Who wants to take a shot at this? 'Cause I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll start the conversation if you want. Let me turn off my video in case it's choppy. I know I've had a couple of conversations with some of the families who are homeschooling and or sending their child to a different school. And some of that has to do with, issues around childcare. The school that they
Uh-oh.
Oh, did we lose Helen?
Oh, maybe. Helen, are you there? I will tell folks that those that are using cell phones, if you can get to a regular computer, you're a little near your whatever your remote device is, it'll clean stuff up dramatically. I've been on conference calls pretty much since 8:30 this morning, and I'm learning that the hard way. So
I can maybe follow up. Oh, Helen just
go ahead.
I understand what she was beginning to say, where any parents that I have spoken to this year who have chosen homeschooling this year specifically have done so out of concern of their child being in school during COVID, childcare issues, not being able to swing the 2 days remote, 2 days in person. And it was just really a better fit for their family. And the conversation I've had with families who have specifically chosen homeschooling this year has been more like, we can't wait to get back. Meaning like when it's all done, when it has smoothed out, we're coming back. Not that this is homeschooling for the long term. That's the feedback I've received in Westminster. And Jessa, I think that's an interesting thought too, of thinking about remote learning for those students who, or the virtual learning for those students who it does work for. I mean, there were times last spring where students really excelled, and there are specific students who it really is beneficial. So I think that's interesting to think about. Are there groups of students we can target to recommend that?
Yeah,
So
Jack,
did it,
I can add to that, Jack. I think just from talking to other superintendents and everything around the state, there is an increase in the homeschooling across the state. It's directly tied to COVID. And for the same reasons that Helen and Liz are speaking to, is that it's just another option families have. And that, and if they can do it, they are. But it seems that once this COVID thing is over, that the kids will be back joining the schools. I think it's just a third option that they have, and they're taking advantage of because they can.
so did they have issues with the remote curriculum offered from VTVLC, or did they choose before that was available?
From my standpoint, from the Mile High view right now, it's more or less, I'm not hearing, I haven't heard anything about I'm having my kid homeschooled because we're not happy with the curriculum, or, I think for what I did hear with some is that going to homeschool because of the spring remote learning we had. It was just too much.
Okay.
And so, but that's as much as they said. It's like, we're just going to homeschool. We can control what our kids are learning at home, and we can control their schedule. So therefore, until COVID's over, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, Chris,
Okay.
I would second that the families that I
Yeah.
spoke to were more like, they kind of made the decision before we maybe even put out our plan for the year. They just didn't know what was going to happen. And instead of waiting it out or seeing what was offered, they just said, it's easier for our family if we just get into the mindset of homeschooling for the year. And that's what they're doing.
Okay. Thank you.
and I
That's
don't know how
actually,
much I'm not sure how much you heard before I went into cyber lockdown, but I mean, essentially, I caught the end of Liz's comments there, and that that's some of what I was also hearing from families. It's the combination of the uncertainty, families trying to work. I think some people were intimidated by VTVLC and the rigor of the curriculum that's offered. And so people just made different choices right now, given all the uncertainties that are going on. I do think that there are some kids that are flourishing with VTVLC, and that that works for them. That kind of learning is just what they need. And then obviously there are other kids that it's not working, and they've either come back to us or have gone on to other choices.
I'm going to ask, since everybody got a chance to, I'm going to ask a couple of questions. I had through a laundry list before we started tonight, and I kept on meeting all day to send them and didn't. In terms of evaluation of kids, how are we doing with that? And both, I know that we're sending out report cards as per the usual, but is there any sort of sense as to how our kiddos are doing in this environment relative to last year this time?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll start, Liz, but I think that teachers are pretty focused on making sure that they're attending to the curriculum that needs to be taught. And teachers do a lot of what's called formative assessment along the way. So they're, we do these big universal screeners at the beginning to sort of get a sense of where kids are at, especially this year with so much, dismissal in the spring, what are all the gaps? But now we've spent a lot of time looking at that and setting goals, setting interventions. I'm doing a small group intervention right now just to try to target, some of those gaps that kids have, either because of a lack of instruction in the spring or just all kinds of things going on. And we're just systematically, working away at teaching the regular curriculum as well as addressing some of these gaps that just need to be filled. And that we do lots of formative assessment along the way. And then come January, we'll do another, deep dive into a universal assessment to sort of see the growth we hope that, most kids most certainly will have done. So it's something that just in normal times teachers pay attention to. But I think, given what's going on right now, I think there's extra attention going on with that, because we want to make sure that our kids are getting all that they need, plus what they missed, in the spring.
Now, how are we evaluating the kids that are in learning at home? Not so much Feed Heal, Vermont Learning Center, because I know they've got their own metrics, but the folks who are essentially being homeschooled, how do we know how they're doing?
Jack, I can answer that. I mean, through the state of Vermont, I mean, we don't know, because technically their school is the homeschool, and they submit at the end of certain times during the year. Then at the end of the year, they have to submit all of the documentation on the work. It's very specific expectations on what they have to cover during the school year. And so whether it's a homeschool program or the parents are doing it themselves, they have to document and send everything in. And then they have people up at the state who go through all of this work, read it, look at it, and let them know if they've met the requirements for homeschool for that particular grade level for that year. Should say Vermont is very progressive when it comes to homeschool and looking at students' work. But as a school, we really don't know until those students come back and we have an opportunity to give them their local state assessments and, like Helen talked about, the formative assessments, to see if there is a gap or if they actually were able to cover more ground than you can in the public school. And it all depends on each family, but it's very well documented by the state. We don't get any of that stuff. That's why when students do come back, we do that assessment on them to get a baseline of where they are after they've been gone for some time, whether it's a year or 2 years of homeschool.
Thank you. Is there anybody else with any other questions on any of this?
I do have another, Jack.
Okay, go for it.
It's more of comments. I don't know if you and Chris maybe had a communication gap just there, because the online remote learners are doing the MAPS testing the same as the in-school kids.
Right.
Not homeschoolers. Okay. And that was actually one of my questions. Was we have the numbers back from the first round of MAPS testing. And I'm curious as to what it showed from the spring, which I'm sure is not great, but also if you're seeing any differences at the beginning of the year that are notable between the kids in VTVLC and the kids in the hybrid learning model. And then I guess that's a question for Liz and or Helen both, and Chris and Lynn. And then I just had a couple of comments because we are in this household doing the remote learning. It's been interesting. And I'm also, there's plenty of other kids and families I've helped out with this. We're using the Florida online curriculum, which is like a pre-canned. I think it was a nice, easy way for them to be able to stand it up really fast. I don't know if it's exactly what I would have chosen because of the way it works, but it's okay. But I did notice some of the VTVLC teachers that we provided, and I know we did this based on teachers who may have had special needs and were at high risk for COVID complications and couldn't be in person right now. But a fair amount of them are inexperienced with online education. I've actually talked to several, they've never even taken like an online college class, which it's something for us to consider because pretty much anybody who's graduated college in the last couple of years has definitely had online classes and they're familiar with learning management systems, et cetera. And some of these teachers aren't. There was one teacher that the way the kids are turning in work is very hard. And I offered to make like an editable PDF out of one of the assignments. And at least one of the teachers didn't even understand what that was. So I'm hoping there's going to be more professional development made available to them soon. But if you could answer the question about the MAPS testing, if you have preliminary numbers to see if there's any difference and to see how bad the spring was, because we know every kid fell behind.
Lynn, why don't you respond? Because I see your hand up.
Thank you. Number one is we didn't do the MAPS testing in the spring. So the latest MAP scores we have are in January of 2020. We did do them this fall, and I can actually work with Michelle Harrington to see if the student's individual family report can go home to those families from the MAPS. So we're kind of talking apples and oranges. What we know are the scores for the students in school based on where, they were in January, and each individual score sheet goes home to the family with the report cards that shows if there was a drop of learning or if it leveled off or if they were able to continue learning. And always during the summer, regardless, there's always a kind of a flat line during the summer for whatever reason. Students, they don't grow during the summer as much as we would like them to, as much as we encourage reading and all of those things. We did continue with our intervention program during the summer with the students who were most at risk, and that was very successful. It was remote, but then the Fontes and Pinnell Leveled Literacy Intervention also has online resources. So that went really well. As far as comparing the January to the September, we really haven't looked at it that way. What we're trying to do is look at what we have right now and how we're going to move on from there, and what kinds of methods and what kinds of strategies we can do to actually pull the kids back up to grade level. So we have implemented a new literacy program in the buildings, and we are working from here to move on so that this year will be a successful year for all the kids. And then your second question is, each teacher that we have, I think we have 5 classroom teachers in the district that agreed to teach for whatever reason virtual learning at the VTVLC. And part of that agreement includes 3 courses, 3 classes in online teaching. So while they're doing the online teaching, they're being trained right along. By the end of the year, they will have a certification to go with their teaching endorsement. They will also be certified to teach online
Dad's getting wood.
classes. So actually the virtual VTVLC is actually teaching them as they go along. There was no time to prepare and say, oh, I want to do this for a career than that. And but once they got in there, they're all being trained now. The students and the teachers are using Canvas, and that's new to people. So that's going to be hard. And if you have spent the majority of your career with in-face or in school, without doing a lot of activities digitally, regardless of what, in school or out of school, it could be a learning curve. But virtual learning, the VTVLC, the collaborative, is working with these teachers to get them certified and up to speed on this method of teaching. So
yeah, I do want to clarify that I'm not calling out teachers for being bad at it or anything. I totally get that it was a learning curve, especially with the elementary curriculum, the way it's in there, sort of this pre-canned thing. I was referring to MAPS testing, just general trends, not even down at the individual student level, just the school-wide average. I know you expect an increase of 30 points or whatever in the first semester.
Each grade,
and I was just wondering how far we were from that.
Well, each grade is different. It's a RIT score and it's on a continuum. So you see a lot of growth in the kindergarten because they're like little sponges and they get the skills quickly. But as you get up in 5th and 6th and 7th grade, the growth turns into 3 or 4 RIT points. I can put together a report that shows where we were in January, just broadly, and where we are now by school. And we can see from there, but I would have to say that every student in the United States of America probably did not grow the way the norms from what we're hoping for. They didn't grow the way we expected or we wanted to, because again, we just didn't have that kind of preparation. We're much better in tune to it now. And then of course, with the 2 principals, they did a marvelous job with the book study. And now with this digging deeper, which is taking it even a level deeper, I think under the circumstances, our kids are going to be doing really, really well. The principals are making sure of that.
And
I agree. Thank you.
And Jessa, I think, I appreciate you bringing up the point, because, we do want to check in with our teachers after their tour and VTVLC is done for the year, just to get an idea of was the training useful? Did they learn from it? Because everyone's going to have a huge learning curve. And if, we want to continue even after COVID's over to move forward with remote, not really remote learning, but really accessing the tools that we've come to use and figure out during this COVID crisis, we're going to want a good idea of, how that training was for them. And in addition, the reason for the, as you're probably well aware, is the reason we didn't do the MAP scores in the spring is because just as we were getting ready to do it, and I think it was almost down to the same week, that's when got down. So
yeah,
scores, but you bring up on a lot of good points, and I think those are things that we all want to continue to look at, because yes, we want our kids to learn, but we also want to make sure that we continue to prepare our teachers to get these kids back to where they need to be, because we know that there's going to be lost ground.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to jump in for a second. A couple of things. One, we don't have, our negotiations committee, as people may know, is a little broken right now. But assuming that we can get it back on track, one of the issues that I think is important is going to be what our expectations are going forward in terms of whether or not we have a different category of teacher that does remote learning, and is there a change in how we compensate it, how we, what expectations we have for how we train? Is this a baseline thing that we expect everyone to have, given that COVID's going to probably be with us, even with the vaccine, for at least 2 more years, just because that's how long it's going to take to roll it out. And that's assuming it works. And I've got some bad news on that front. So those issues are going to need attention, as is the need for how we're, it's one thing to fill in the gaps when this is a couple months here and a couple months there over a year. But if we're dealing with going in and out of quarantine for the next 2 to 3 years, there's a big aggregate learning gap. How do we deal with it? Are we going to extend the school year? Do we think we should? Do we want to advocate for that? How do we want to set up a summer program, given that maybe half our students are going to need that if they're going to stay even remotely close to the expectations that we have from grade to grade? And this is an area that I really want us to start thinking about, and start maybe even identifying some time to discuss in more detail, either an online retreat or something, because I think we've got a couple places here that we're going to need to deal with in a very serious way and in some detail, because adding to the school year might be kind of tough to do. Figuring out how we deal with our staff if we mandate this, or if we do a set aside, is going to be a big deal, and we need to think about how we handle this stuff. It's something that I feel boards need to have a handle on, but probably shouldn't be leading, but we'll lead if we have to, I guess is the phrase of art here. So I'm going to be looking for our administrators to start to think about that and start to talk to us about, what steps might be required. Because to be honest with you, if we make it past Thanksgiving without a mandatory closure, I'm going to be kind of surprised, and I'm willing to take bets about whether we make it to Christmas, because I'm a betting person and I won't lose. So we need to, and this is going to be our experience, not just this year, but almost certainly next year. And then we'll see after that. But we've got more of this to deal with, and we're going to have to accept this is our new reality for a while.
Yeah, Jack, I agree, but I think that's a larger discussion that we should have at the SU level, because with the CBA, but it's definitely something we have to look at. Is, like I said, how are we going to continue to move forward with what we learned using technology, but also enhancing it and making it better and easier accessible, and keep the rigor. So I think that's, something we definitely should talk about at the SU level.
Yep, I'm just pitching it to make sure that it is on the agenda at the SU level, because one, I'm not technically a voting member of the SU board, even though I show up. And two, it's the sort of thing that can slip between the cracks unless people like me and my colleagues here start lobbying to make sure we address this proactively.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely something we need to look at, and I appreciate you bringing it up, because we don't want this to slip through the cracks, because I agree. I think this is going to continue for a while. We need to be prepared and have a plan in place.
Cool. All right. Is there anything else for our principal report? We move on. I'm not seeing anybody waving their hand, or even the little blue one. So I'm going to assume we're moving on to 5B, finance. Flora, this is your time to shine.
Hi.
Hello.
So the business office right now, we just working with all of the principals for the FY22 budget. So that way, when we finish audits, we should have auditors in-house at the beginning of December. The that way we could present budget and audits at the same time for you guys before the new year.
Mhm. Now,
So that's right now what we're working on.
when are you going to be, when are you going to be ready to have us initiate the process of budget development?
So I'm planning on finishing budget by next week. That way principals could review everything that we have together for them. The issue that we were having is that we have to finish with open enrollment so we can know which one are going to be the new rates for the benefits. So once we have all that information in system, that's when we could just add that portion to the budget for each of the schools.
Okay, because we are going to need to go, I would very much like not to wait to the last minute and screw up another town's worth of tax calculations. And I'd like to get our budgets in and approved in March, like normal school districts do. So, I'm not as willing this year to be last in line because it's been a problem, and I want to avoid that if we possibly can. So let me know when you'd like to start, because I'm going to call, as people may have forgotten, is the Budget Committee's Committee of the Whole. And so we're all in this together, and I want to get the process started. And I would say, when you are ready, I'd like to kind of do a preliminary walkthrough sooner rather than later, even if we don't have all the numbers.
So the idea right now is to have everything together and finalized from our side by December 4th. That way is before we get auditors in-house. I wouldn't want to be working with budget and audit at the same time. So that's why we are trying to push that out.
So
that way we can just
sorry, I'm
concentrate
not
on
sure what you're telling me.
I'm sorry?
I'm not sure what you're telling me. Are we waiting till January to do our budgets, or are we?
No, we are working on it already. We should have it complete from our side by December 4th. That way we could present to you guys, and then you guys could do your portion of it.
Okay.
And to give the approval. No, not January. We're working on it already.
Now, I will remind you that just because it's really important. When we do budgets this year, we have this issue about whether or not the school district will be remain in its present form. So we will need to have that budgetary data broken out, both from the school district as it currently stands as a whole, but also to have it broken out, say, if there is a Westminster and a unified district, or if there are 3 districts, because I don't know which one of those we're going to be in come next July. So
I do have it broken out by each of the schools. It's not as one, so okay. That wouldn't be an issue. Actually, the way that I have met was with each principal, so each one of them separate has their own budget. And then on our end in the system, which is e-finance will unify the information, but I have it all separate. I just don't have it at once.
That's fine. I just know that last year when we tried to separate it out, we were only able to separate out about 75% of it. And we had this bolus of stuff we hadn't, we didn't break out. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, I think we're beyond that, Jack, because I think last year, it seems like it's been happening forever, is that we had some of the schools in e-finance and some of them not in e-finance, but we're not that, we're so grateful that we're not in that situation anymore. So we're able to move along with the budget process a lot sooner.
Cheryl, you've got your hand up, so this is.
Right. I was just going to say, I want to commend Flora and the team, and I know Chris and Lynn are involved in this too. But now that we're getting the budget reports every 2 weeks, it's great. I mean, I just looked at the ones you sent us for November 9 that were issued, and Athens and Grafton are there separately. Westminster is there, and that's how we've been seeing the reports for some months now. There's no issue like there was before, Jack. This is really straightforward in terms of our being able to see the expenses associated with each building.
No, I appreciate that it's been broken out. Flora and I had discussions about this almost from the first day, and it's very helpful. And I am anticipating that will be the case. I'm just saying that when we do the budget, we need to have it continue that way so that we can do, as we did that first year when we were merging, you know, whatever we're proposing, whether it can be a matter of simple arithmetic, whether we're walking in as 1, 2, or 3 districts, nobody's going to have to jump through a whole lot of hoops to make it happen. The only issue will be, and the only fun part will be the tax calculation, because that'll have to be done 3 times. And I'm sorry about that. But that's the only part of this that will be at issue. And just reminding the team at Cherry Hill, this is, you know, this is the one thing you get to do with us, unfortunately. So, all right. Now, is there anything else, Flora, we need to touch on? Is there any?
Seems
Good.
later, but it's a lot on our end.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't know if you wanted to elaborate or if we can move on to item 6, because we have the audits from way back when.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
All right. We have the audits from way back when. I'm not sure, did people get supportive documents? Did they get the actual audit reports? Did everybody got those? I think you sent them out a while ago. I'm just not sure if people remember what they look like. Because one of the things that we have to do here is we have to, and because there is some ambiguity, particularly about 2017-18, as to who is supposed to approve those, what we had suggested as a methodology was that this board would approve both years, and then we would send the report of 17-18 to the board members that were in place at that time, and have them at least look at it, and even though it's non-binding, have a resolution of support, and that way there would be no question about whether we had properly audited documents. The state seems to believe that we are the successor entity, but they also believe that we're not quite legal in the fact that we didn't have these things approved by the individual boards back last year when they were supposed to. So I'm ready to entertain a motion to formally accept the audit reports for 2017 through 18 and 2018 through 19, if people are comfortable doing that. Don't put your hands all up at once. There's one. Lynn?
From what I read through them, I had no questions and thought I would go with accepting them. Make a motion.
All right. Cheryl? Is this a discussion or a second? Second, I think that was.
That was a second. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. Any further discussion? I looked at them, but it was kind of a while ago now at this point. But I actually thought the quality of the audits was better than those simple reconciliations we'd seen in the past, and so I was kind of happy with what I saw. About time, frankly. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor of formally accepting the audit reports for 2017 through 18 and 2018 through 19. And I'm going to add a friendly amendment and authorizing the chair to send these reports to the board members that were in place for the school year 2017 through 18 for their advice and consent, if you don't mind. So, can I take that as a friendly amendment? You don't? Yes, Gwen, you okay with that? All right, all in favor? Say aye. Gwen?
Aye.
Melissa? Aye. Cheryl? Like the thumbs up.
Aye.
All right, and I will make that unanimous. So that's done. Now,
Jessa?
Aye.
Jessa, because you don't have your screen on,
You didn't need me though.
I wanted you anyway, Jessa. Unanimity is important. Sorry. And that won't happen again. By the way, let me just take a quick break before we go on to new business. I saw a couple of people, actually one of them has disappeared. Jamie Camel. Jamie, you want to introduce yourself, if you don't mind? If you're still there. I didn't know who that was. Does anybody know who Jamie is?
She's a 4th grade teacher at Central School.
Oh, okay. Well, you're welcome either to talk or to participate, if whichever is appropriate. So, and there was someone else who was on briefly, but I've lost who that was.
Dempsey Potter.
That was it, Dempsey.
Dempsey, and she is a paraprofessional at Westminster.
That's right. I thought that's who that might be, but I wasn't quite sure. You know, it's not a common name, but it's not necessarily the only person. All right, so we're on to new business. We didn't delineate this and probably should have, but the the obvious piece of new business might be an update on the situation with the petitions relative to district reconfiguration. Cheryl, I'm going to ask you on this. I wasn't able to meet with the town of Grafton. I think David Major was going to make some sort of presentation there, but I've literally been in meetings for like 2 weeks straight, so I haven't. I'm not up to date at all what's going on, and I'm wondering if you know.
Well, yes, petitions were circulated in Westminster with Westminster voters, and more than the number needed were certified and taken to the select board. David Major being the former chair of the Westminster Town School Board. And I'm thinking that maybe it's 2 weeks ago. I'm not looking at my calendar, but he did make that presentation, and the select board of the town of Westminster unanimously approved the intent of that resolution, of that motion that was petitioned, which is to hold a special meeting on or before December 15, whereby the voters would decide whether or not to withdraw from this unified school district.
All right. Do you know if he made a presentation to either Athens or to Grafton in addition, or was it just to the?
I don't know, and I don't know. I'm not aware of that having happened at all. But he has spoken with the Westminster Town Select Board on 2 occasions, and that was the most recent was to show them the certified signatures of voters, and that is, then he was asked to check with attorneys to make sure all the language around a special election like this would be done properly. And I think that the Athens and Grafton administrators have been copied on emails around this. It's my understanding that if the town people of Westminster vote to approve withdrawal, then the towns of Athens and Grafton voters would also hold an election to ratify or not the request from Westminster. And if all 3 towns vote to approve that, then it next goes to the State Board of Education.
Right. I know there was some interest in Grafton for doing something similar. And while I was not able to come to the Grafton Select Board meeting, I saw after the fact that it was on the agenda. Hey, Wendy, this is Wendy Martin, who's on the Grafton News. And maybe you know, I've been meaning to call you, actually been meaning to call you and been meaning to call Joe. Did anything come up at the at the Grafton town, at the Grafton Select Board meeting, or was my absence simply noticed and people moved on?
They have not, they did not, they have no information about it, and it was going to be on the agenda for the Monday select board meeting, but I happened to be at the town office today, that's why I know all of this.
Yeah,
And they took it off the agenda because they have no information, so they figured why talk about it if they don't have anything to
Alright.
talk about.
you
So,
know, as I have said right along, to some extent, this is one of these things where it would be a little bit more appropriate if someone not on the school board went folks through this process, but I can make myself available as, from an informational perspective to say, if you want to do this, this is how you do it, and then get out of the way and let people figure it out. And the same with the Athens board, either Win or I can, go over and do the same thing with them if they're willing, if they'd like to have a walkthrough.
yeah, because if not, Jack, who? No, there's nobody who's going to step forward to do it, really, probably.
Well, then, that means I'm stuck. Lynn, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I talked with the select board last month and presented the information about this breakup of the union, and they were on board with it and will support whatever comes out.
All right, but you don't believe that there is going to be a petition to have Athens withdraw from the district, independent of anything, as far as you know?
No, there was no talk on that. I mentioned that Westminster was in the process of doing that and gave the process that Cheryl just mentioned, and they sound like they're definitely in favor of the split and up for Westminster taking the lead.
Okay, well, then I guess it's up to me to have the conversation. When's the next meeting of the Grafton board? Because it's not on my calendar.
They're meeting Monday night at 6.
All right, but it's not on the agenda for that one, so, right? But
It's not, but they've been known to change the agenda.
I hear that.
Yeah.
All right, let me see if I can make that meeting, and I'll try.
Jack, if you can get it on the agenda, I will virtually attend with you as well.
That would be lovely.
If you could get the word out to the school advisory committee.
Yeah, I have sent stuff out, as far as I know, to everybody in that regard, but be good to confirm that, because as I said, it's been nuts for me for the last couple of weeks. Okay.
Well, Jack, let's insert again that the Westminster Town Select Board has taken action to hold a special meeting
Right.
on or before December 15th. So that's in motion.
Yeah, and thank you for the reminder as to the dates on that. So we will have that as a hard data point. Lynn?
Once that vote is taken, is there a deadline on when the Athens and Grafton need to ratify that separation? Is that something I should be bringing up with the select board this month and letting them know that this is a strong possibility?
There's something in the law, and I'm not looking at that right now. Jack, my memory is maybe it's anywhere 30, 60, 90 days. We do need to know that, but there is something in the law.
My expectation, when this happens, and I'm assuming it will happen, then it becomes a district responsibility to work with the other towns that are not withdrawing, to hold a referendum of approval and disapproval. And I believe that it has to pass both in the aggregate and by both towns. At least that's what it would have been back in the days when we talked about Grafton withdrawing from the high school district. I think it's the same protocol that follows here, and that's my expectation, so that we would be the ones who would jointly warn a special meeting of approval of the district and of the two towns. And so I'll need to make sure we meet sort of as soon as we have final results and there are no recounts and no challenges to ballots. And you know, nobody from the Trump administration is coming in to challenge it, anything, that we'll get that done almost immediately thereafter. So that seems like the plan. So we might have a special meeting in December, just what everybody wants, so we can get this taken care of. So be prepared for that. Are there any other new business items for discussion and or action? Just a reminder that as soon as Flora gives us the high sign, I may call a special meeting of us all as a budget committee. And as we know, we have two dates of only which we take one for regular meeting and one for budget. But if we want to get this done early, we might have a couple more, because I'd like to get this, I really want this nailed down so we are in the front of the line rather than the last in line this coming year. I have real wishes to get this all wrapped up in March on a personal level. So there you go. Anything else we got? Moving on then to number 8, appointments and resignations. Do we have any appointments, resignations?
No, we do not.
I love that, because that means that it's 7:08 and I get to ask for director's comments. And I'll start with you, Lynn.
Me?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
director.
Nothing at this point, thank you.
Melissa?
I also don't have anything. Just happy Thanksgiving. Hope everybody is safe.
Yes.
Cheryl?
Well, I think I'll echo Melissa there, and another thank you to everybody, and a special thanks to Westminster for taking such quick and decisive action when needed and moving to the fully remote last week. But a sincere thanks to all teachers, all staff, everybody, administration, and the students. You keep doing all of this so well and with a tremendous amount of integrity and heart and professionalism in these times. So thanks to each of you. Convey that to your staffs, please. I'm sure on behalf of all of us.
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. And Jessa?
I do have comments.
Go for it.
I actually really want to thank Flora, who is doing great things in the business office, Chris, all of the teachers, VTVLC, the in-person teachers, the special ed teachers. It's been a crazy year. And the parents. I don't know if a lot of people realize how our parents are running around trying to organize childcare. They're getting their kids in school 4 days a week. They're picking up meals. The amount of work that is required from the parents of their remote families is more than I thought it would be.
From experience?
Yeah, I'm saying from experience that I am very fortunate. We are a family with college educated parents. One of us has the ability to work full-time from home, sometimes the other one as well. And it's been an experience for us. And there's many people who don't have the resources that we do, and they're still making it work somehow. And I really hope the schools are looking out for those families, because I can't imagine how difficult this would be if we were not this fortunate. To everyone else, we have had a horrible week with the COVID virus. Please just wear a mask, don't meet in groups, stay home. Just wear a mask. That's really all it takes. Because we have to get over this and go back to the before times, because a lot of us just can't take another year. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessa. I'm just going to say in closing 2 things. And this is both as a way to sort of remind myself that I want to do this by stating it in public. I would like in January, if at all possible, to have sort of an open forum online with the parents, because we've been doing this program. We've been bouncing people against the wall. I've had some very heartfelt and careful comments from some parents as to what they've had to go through to make this work. And I think that they represent a much larger community of people who we need to hear out, because I haven't heard from them collectively, and I think we ought to. So I'd like to do that at a January meeting if we can. Secondly, and we should have talked about this in more detail, really do think the chances of our getting past Thanksgiving are rocky. And the chances of our getting past Christmas are approaching zero. But if we are at a point where we are going to close the schools after Thanksgiving or sometime in December, I just want people to be aware that that could happen. You know, I've said, we've all said that the school operates on a hair trigger. You know, much the way Westminster found out the hard way a week back, we could flip to remote learning at a moment's notice. That's a terrible thing for parents, not a terrible thing for teachers, terrible for everybody, but it's our reality. And so you might get a call to both do that, announcing that we're doing that, or you may get I may ask you all to meet in a special emergency session if there are things we have to do to help with that, especially if it turns into a longer term situation rather than just a week. So that's not the best news in the world, but I just want to put it out there and make certain everybody isn't surprised if that happens, because you shouldn't be, unfortunately. That's all I got. Helen, did you have your hand up on that, or decide to let me hang with that? I think that's a good idea. Yeah. So I guess at this point, I'll hear a motion to adjourn. I see one from Melissa and second by Cheryl. And is there any discussion? No, it's a privileged motion. So all in favor, say aye, raise your hand, or turn off your screen as you choose. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
See, how do I turn myself off?